Buhari sets up presidential task force for control of coronavirus as Nigeria reckons second case.
Kano Emirate Council gets new emir as state government dethrones Sanusi II for disloyalty.
To announce the appointment of Alhaji Amina Ado Bayero as the new emir of Kano.
Senate holds public hearing on social media bill.
The Senate's eventual position will be enriched by the eventual report of this committee.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss advocacy with regard to coronavirus.
Since the discovery of the index case of coronavirus in Lagos about a fortnight ago, the federal government has indicated its capability to contain the situation, just as the country did during the Ebola era. Kisley.
That's right. Now, from that day, the Nigerian government reactivated its isolation centers with the index person being quarantined in Yaba, Lagos for observation and treatment.
The index case no doubt reawakened medical officials and non-medical personnel alike as to what next to do in view of the devastating effect of the coronavirus if not contained.
Now, as part of efforts to enlighten Nigerians on the preventive measures against the virus, the federal government, through the Ministry of Health and other line ministries, including Information and Culture, have continued to give regular updates on the virus.
Yes, Kinsley, so many awareness campaigns are being carried out in various places in addition to jingles and announcements on media, particularly government-owned media organizations like the Nigerian Television Authority, to carry the message home.
Now, the state governments have also keyed into the federal government's efforts as many states are establishing isolation centers for persons who might, of course, test positive or are suspected of having the virus.
But with the confirmation of the second case of the virus in Ogun State arising from the contact with the index case, the federal government also stepped up efforts towards ensuring that the virus does not impact negatively on the country.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari has already set up a presidential task force for the control of the coronavirus. But one question to still ask is, what is the level of awareness amongst Nigerians about the virus? And what is the level of their compliance with the suggested or recommended precautionary measures? And what further strategies should be deployed to get the message to trickle right down to the grassroots? What should the state media organizations, community and religious leaders be doing to further spread the message of safety to their adherents? This is Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I welcome you to this edition of the program.
And I am Juma Yusuf. Many thanks for joining us on the program, coming to you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA. We are broadcasting live in Abuja.
All right. Now, we also have a second topic, and that is on the Ivory 8 Ball, which, of course, will come up after our first conversation on advocacy with respect to coronavirus. Plus, of course, our regular complimentary segments. This is Newspaper Review Business and others. For now, here is Habiba Oladipo with the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Habiba.
Good morning, Kingsley and Jumai. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the morning news. Worried over the impact of the coronavirus disease on the nation's economy, President Muhammadu Buhari has constituted a 5-man committee to quickly assess the situation and advise the federal government on the next line of action. The committee is chaired by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed.
Our mandate is to make a very quick assessment of the impact of this coronavirus on the economy, especially as it affects the crude oil price. But it is very clear that we will have to revisit the crude oil benchmark price that we have of $57 per barrel. we have to revisit it and lower the price. Where it will be lowered to is the subject of the work of this committee. What the impact will be on that is that there will be reduced revenues to the budget, and it will mean cutting the size of the budget.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has set up a presidential task force for the control of coronavirus COVID-19 with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, as chairman, while Dr. Sani Aliyu is the national coordinator. A statement by Garba Shehu, senior special assistant to the president on media and publicity, also includes ministers of health, interior, aviation, human affairs, education, information, environment, and director generals of the Department of State Services, Center for Disease Control, and representative of the World Health Organization as members. The statement adds that the first and finished task group is expected to deliver within a maximum of 6 months. The Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, has confirmed another case of coronavirus. The new case of coronavirus is one of the contacts of the index case under isolation. This was revealed during the minister's press briefing at the University of Benin Teaching Hospital. And away from health, the Kano State Governor, Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, has approved the appointment of Aminu Ado Bayero as the new Emir of Kano. This followed his nomination by 4-member Kingmakers Committee of the Emirates.
Section 11, subsection 1 of the Kano State Emirate Council Law 2019, that is equivalent to Hijrah 1441, to announce the appointment of Alhaji Amina Ado Bayero, the former Emir of Bichi Emirate, as the new Emir of Kano.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has again called on members of the Electronic Media Content Owners Association of Nigeria to support the ongoing reforms in the broadcast industry in Nigeria. The minister made the plea at a meeting with members in Lagos.
The sheer scope of content available to us with a lot of hard work and research, you can get first-class content out of the rich history of our country.
The Protection from Internet Falsehood and Manipulation Bill introduced in the Senate last year has continued to receive dissenting voices. These further resonated at a public hearing on the bill convened by the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters.
To regulate and control the use of Internet and its intermediaries in the transmission of information in Nigeria.
National security is one factor that must be taken into consideration.
The Senate's eventual position will be enriched by the eventual report of this committee.
Victims of the recent bandit attacks in 5 villages of Kaduna State have received relief materials donated by the First Lady, Hajia Aisha Muhammadu Buhari, through her pet project, Future Assured.
The essence of bringing these items is to tell the community that the government is with them.
And that is the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Jumai after this break.
Not so fast.
Look, I'm tired. I want to check out of this country for greener pastures.
Just calm down for a moment. Please sit down. Do you have a job where you're going to?
No, but someone is arranging,
Listen, Alinko. Checking out of this country without proper planning means one thing. Unimaginable begin. You know, I've been in the diaspora, but legitimately doing great things at home and abroad. As I've been saying, without the proper footing abroad, the risk is not worth it. Listen, Alinko, it's better to be home than be trapped abroad or even end up in prison.
My name's Mr. Muftau Abiodun Balogun. We started this business 4 years ago, and this is the production outlet where we do about 4,000 to 5,000 birds per day. With the closure of the border recently, we've been experiencing massive surge in demand. Our sales per day now is going to be between 15 to 20,000 birds. We needed to expand all avenues because of the multiplier effect it's creating. And the most interesting thing about this closure is that many of my farmers today are farmers we recruited recently, and they are young graduates. What the government is doing will lead us right. And I can tell you, if the government sustains this thing, sky will not even be our limit.
Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1, a delicious combination of rich cocoa and wholesome goodness of milk. Just add hot water to get an instant chocolatey treat. Cadbury Hot Chocolate 3-in-1. Just add hot water. Available in stores at 18 naira.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria. Nigeria has recorded its first quarterly trade deficit since July 2016 as the value of its exports fell by 9.79% in the fourth quarter of 2019, while imports rose by 37.2%. Chimobi Walter in Nigeria has details on business news.
The latest foreign trade in goods report released by the National Bureau of Statistics indicate that the value of the nation's total trade rose by 10.15% to 10.12 trillion naira in the fourth quarter of 2019 over the value recorded in the third. A fourth breakdown shows that the export component dropped by 9.79% to 4.77 trillion naira, while the import component increased to 5.35 trillion naira, all against the third quarter. In the meantime, the federal government has approved payment of second tranche of 108.52 billion naira subsidy debt to fuel marketers, bringing the total payment to about 90%. Adetunji Oyebamiji, chairman of the Major Oil Marketers Association of Nigeria, MOMAN, confirmed in Lagos at the weekend that the payment will be done through promissory notes. In other stories, the Transmission Company of Nigeria, TCN, says the current power outage being experienced across the country due to low gas supply to thermal power stations would last for 10 days. A statement by its General Manager Public Affairs, Ndidimba, said all the thermal power plants were experiencing gas constraint, with some generating 0 megawatts. The Nigerian stock market has reacted to global trends that sent the all-share index falling by more than 2% at the close of trading on Monday. Here is a graphic representation of closing figures. With business news, I'm Chimobi Walter Naji.
Thank you very much, Chimobi, for the business package. Next is a review of the papers we have this morning.
newspaper reviewer Bayo Tiobi is in the studio. Good morning, Bayo.
Thank you, Jimmy. Good morning. Good to see you too. Good morning, Kingsley.
Right, Bayo, good to
morning,
see
Nigeria.
you. Okay.
Yes, we begin the review this morning with the Daily Sun newspaper. Just beside the masthead, oil price fall. FG to slash 2020 budget, with a rider set to revisit 57 crude oil benchmark price. And just below the masthead, IPPIS, ASU, declares 2-week warning strike. You find that story on page 39. Shake-up at Kano Emirate. Sanusi falls, banished. Ado Bayera's son rises. With rider Ganduje dethrones Kano Emir, banishes him to Nasarawa. Tension as deposed Emir supporters protest. His last moment at the palace. See the picture story there from Emir Sanusi Lamido Sanusi and the new Emir of Kano, Alhaji Aminu Ado Bayero. At the bottom plate of the Daily Sun newspaper, Nigeria records second coronavirus case as Buhari sets up committee to review impact. You find that story on page 6. Nigerian nun's burial in jeopardy as U.S. Embassy denies siblings visa. With rider, there is nobody in U.S. to organize her funeral, cries out her brother. That story is on page 5. APC crisis, state chairman back Oshomole. You find that story on page 39. Kinsley.
Okay, let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation, above the nameplate, says 600 Air Force men to battle Kaduna bandits. With a rider, ISWAP camp bombed. Details on page 5. ASU begins strike over payroll and others. According to the government, the action is illegal. Details on page 7. Nigeria gets a second COVID-19 case, that's coronavirus. Buhari sets up task force. And below the nameplate says budget 2020 caught inevitable, says minister. And the lead story, of course, is what is also the lead on the front page of the Sun. Says Sanusi deposed, banished as Bayero becomes emir. 2 riders, he is guilty of disobedience and insubordination. Government and ACF call for calm. And lastly, there on the front page, other than the foot of the page, it says State Chairman Bako Shomole Giadom at Secretariat, Uzodima, we need a stable party. 6 kidnapped in Sokoto, page 5, and knocks for social media bill at the hearing. It is on page 7. Bayo.
Thank you, Kinsley. Well, the news of the Nation is the deposition of Malam Muhammadu Sanusi II. He has been deposed as the Emir of Kano. The secretary to the Kano State government said it was for the respect to the governor and other government agencies. The secretary, Malam Alhaji Usman Alhaji, said the removal, which was with immediate effect, was for violation of Part 3 of the Kano State law. Later on, an announcement was made, and Aminu Ado Bayero was named as the new emir. Until his appointment, he was the emir of Bichi. It may be recalled that in 1963, Muhammadu Sanusi I, the grandfather of the current Muhammadu Sanusi II, was also deposed and exiled to Azari. History is repeating itself. 57 years later, Muhammad Sanusi has been deposed and has been exiled to Nasarawa State. He was he was succeeded then by Alhaji Ado Bayero in 1963, and when he died in 2014, Lamido Sanusi succeeded him. Now, the son of Ado Bayero has also succeeded the grandson of Sanusi. Meanwhile, Aminu Ado Bayero, who is now the emir, is the son of the late Ado Bayero. He was, until his appointment, he had the title as Damajin Kano. He was also at another time the Damburan of Kano and also Serkin Dawakin Sakar Gida. His last position was Wambai Kano until he was appointed the Emir of Bichi. It was the position of the Emir of Bichi. Now he has ascended the throne as the Emir of Kano. It may be recalled that last year, the Kano State government actually splitted the whole Kano State into 4 emirates. COVID virus. The second case has tested positive to COVID virus. The case is not a fresh one. It was one of the contact persons with the index case. So far, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, has announced the identification of the second COVID virus. He also said that 40 persons who had contact with the index person in Ogun and another 20 in Lagos had all been in isolation. Currently, there are 3 persons in isolation who are being monitored closely. But so far, there are 2 confirmed cases. But as far as the index case is concerned, he is said to have improved. He's no longer having fever, but he will be discharged when they test and he doesn't emit any of the viruses of the coronavirus. That is when he will be said to be all clear. Meanwhile, the Commissioner for Health, Lagos State, Professor Akin Abayomi, had identified that they are still on the trail of 2 of the passengers who were on the Turkish airline that brought the index case to Nigeria. Apparently, the persons filled in information and the information were not very correct. So it's been difficult to trace them, but they have not given up. They are still looking out for them so that they'll be very sure. You will recall that the index case came in February 24th, and now it's about 13 days since its arrival. And the incubation period for the COVID virus is about 14 days. We are almost getting out of it. Unfortunately, a second case has been identified. They are still looking out to see if there will be any other cases from the index case. Meanwhile, the Nigerian scientists have been congratulated by the World Health Organization because they have been able to identify the genome of the COVID virus. And it is a first feat on the continent of Africa.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's very commendable. Very commendable. I think that the point about what Lagos State government did yesterday in announcing the names of those 2 passengers on the Turkish Airlines, their names had to be mentioned specifically, because up to now, if you recall, the name of the Italian who brought in the virus has not been mentioned.
Yes.
Neither has the second name also been mentioned, I mean, advisedly. But for these 2 persons who decided to slip away and get into the population, it is first in their own interest, and it is also in the interest of their loved ones, because those whom they are in close contact with, and the rest of the population. Nobody is going to put you in detention. Nobody is going to. You are not going to be criminalized or stigmatized. It is for the government to observe you. And I mean, when you are under such quarantine, as it were, or under observation, you are, as the saying goes on the street, government Pekin. I mean, that's what it means. But I think that Nigerians ordinarily should have this in mind. That the whole idea is to protect you yourself, protect those who are closest to you, and then the larger population. And I think that the gentlemen or whoever they are have not behaved well in the current circumstance.
I think by giving out their names to the public, we offer an opportunity to even members of the public themselves, if you know them, to help in identifying and locating them. Because unless they self-isolate, they pose a danger until they are sure that probably they are not infected with the COVID virus. But until then, and that is confirmed scientifically, they can be a danger to society.
I hope they've isolated themselves as they heard the news about the man that came in. I do hope
At what time would they have isolated themselves? Are you with me?
Yeah.
I mean, the Director General of NCDC, that's Dr. Chikwe Hekwazu, he was on the high-powered WHO delegation to China.
Yes.
Upon his return from China, he decided to self-isolate.
Yes.
I mean, last week on Good Morning Nigeria, he couldn't join us live on the program, but he had to join us via Skype from his residence, from where he was also working. The Minister of Health was here. So that's the best practice, and there's no big deal about doing that. I mean, unless the persons were not properly enlightened, as to our symptoms. Well, the biggest story of all of this has to do with the deposition of Mohammed Sanusi II. That's the Emir of Kano. I mean, we've seen a number of incidents before all of this. The Kano Emirate was split into four in the first instance, and then we have all kinds of allegations against him, and then of course he's been summoned, to the anti-graft agency of the state. He himself had also gone to court. Well, those are issues. Let's say these are the traditional politics of Kano. For an outsider, one or two interesting things would be, how all of this fits into our constitutional jurisprudence. Yes, you can say in the past, in 1963, his grandfather was deposed, XYZ. Today, our rights jurisprudence has escalated. Fundamental rights enforcement, it's open, to any individual. And two critical issues arising out of that, in my opinion, will be as follows. I mean, one, fair hearing. That's one question that will arise. And then the other one also relates to the right to freedom of movement. Yes. So, I don't know, as I said, I mean, their politics aside, can a government or an individual purport to restrict the movement of another person and say you are confined to one particular location? You can't President Buhari on his own say that you, Bayo Otoyebe or Kingsley or Juma, you can't go beyond Area 11 in Abuja. You are here. Is it possible?
No, it's not possible.
Well, I think they probably would have done that under an existing law, because we're talking about the precedent as far back as 1963, when an emir is deposed, he is ostracized from his immediate constituency for peace to reign. And even in the case of Mohammed Sanusi, it was during the People's Redemption Party, when it came into power, that he was brought from Azare to Wudil. That is when he was allowed to come into Kano State proper. So throughout the time of his banishment, he was not allowed to come into the period. I think it must be related to the chieftaincy laws and regulations for a peaceful coexistence.
Yeah, Bayo, I mean, there's no question about that. One appreciates that. But I've been talking about the evolution of our rights jurisprudence. Somebody will take that law and place it against the provisions of the Constitution. I mean, the governor or the state government has operated on the basis of the Constitution to say that, look, there is a law validly passed by the State House of Assembly, yes, which itself derives from the Constitution, and then so on and so forth. It is not the issue of whether it should remain or it shouldn't remain. It's to say that you restrict it. What is the, I don't know, as I said, those are issues that for outsiders be of particular interest. Yes. Are you with me? Yeah. So, and then for peace to reign, I mean, some of the things that you have raised, they are also very important. The other one,
the House of Assembly, even at Kano State House of Assembly yesterday, there was almost a struggle for the maize, and this ensued because prior to yesterday, there was 2 petitions at the State House of Assembly about the emir, and it had been referred to committee. So during plenary, a member of the House raised the issue, and it became contentious. It was the sergeant at arms that saved the tussle for the maize. Apparently, they had to go into a closed session, and that is what saved the day. But this atmosphere was not quite friendly.
All right, Bayo, just before we take the editorial, one other very interesting issue is on budget 2020 cut inevitable. The president has set up a committee, which is a very prompt response by the president with regard to the dramatic fall in oil price, well now below the threshold of $57 per barrel. That is in the 2020 budget, and what, of course, will be required to be done. The Minister of Finance is there, Minister of State Finance, the NNPC, GMD, Central Bank Governor, and others. But I think that beyond this committee, one would imagine for now that perhaps this is the time for you to get your economic advisory council or advisory committee, or to hold their own extraordinary meetings. They're supposed to be meeting or submitting reports to the president every quarter, and they have submitted one report. But we're already in an extraordinary times, as it were. So you get them to look at the broad range of consequences of all of this. It was a topic we had on Good Morning Nigeria yesterday. You have to look at the implication on monetary policy, on fiscal policy, on trade policy, and then the responses that ordinarily should flow from this, so that whatever else is happening around the world, Nigeria has, as it were, a coordinated and resilient reaction to all of that?
Talking about the presidential task force, there are two of them now. Yesterday,
yes,
there was a presidential task force for COVID virus.
Yes.
It comprises 6 ministers, including Minister of Health, Minister of Aviation, Minister of Interior, and Minister for Humanitarian, as well as the Director General of DSS and the Nigeria Center for Disease Control. The other presidential committee is obvious. The 2020 budget is predicated on the oil price of $57. As at yesterday, Brent crude has dropped as low as $32. And that means that all your arithmetic about the budget, as all of a sudden, is about to collapse because you predicated it on 57 and it's gone almost 50% of what you had predicted. And therefore, there is need to rework the indices. Now the editorial.
All right, Bayo. The editorial is coming from Daily Trust newspaper, and it's at page 14. Speed up disposal of overtime cargoes.
Yes, there's concern about cargoes overstaying, and there has been challenges, and those who are in the maritime services will tell you that our port, particularly the port at Lagos, is one of the best in the coast of West Africa. However, the procedure for clearing cargo is so cumbersome that importers run away from our ports, and that is why they prefer to use the port either in Ghana or Benin Republic and then freight their goods in across the border. Now with the borders closed, they are now forced to use the port. But the tendency is that if Nigeria must not continue to lose revenue, those obstacles that are becoming bottlenecks and making revenue cargoes delay should be completely removed. You will recall that several instances they have set up task forces to eliminate some of the agencies that are not necessary or related to cargo clearing at the port. But each time around, you find them almost going back. And so there has always been emphasis that the customs must ensure that impetuses and bottlenecks that eliminate opportunities for revenue or delay cargo releases are eliminated so that we can have rapid services at the airport. That will also be enhanced by the extension of the rail that is going to the airport, particularly eliminate the issues of congestion at the port for cargo. So with the train movement, if it comes up, we will have ease of movement of cargo and delays will be delayed. It will be eliminated, I mean.
All right, Bayo, well, thank you for being around. ASU has used the IPPIS as one of the reasons for their running strike for 2 weeks. So it's a running story. I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to return to it.
It has been long coming.
Yes. Bayo, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you.
See you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll get ahead with our two topics for discussion this morning. Advocacy on coronavirus and another topic after that. Now, President Buhari.
Irrespective of religion, tribe, the heroes of our past did their best to take Nigeria to where it is today. It will be unfortunate, I repeat, unfortunate, absolutely, if we don't keep Nigeria intact. We must put our differences behind. We must let everybody know that human beings cannot live together without some differences. But at the end of the day, our country is Nigerian. It must always come first.
Get ready for the Unity Challenge reality TV show. Coming soon.
Engineering skills and technology define the quality of television transmission output. Training and retraining of appropriate personnel on the management of modern equipment is therefore a key competition strategy in the dynamic television industry. NTA TV College, Jos, invites relevant desk officers to special engineering courses as follows. 1-week course on audio engineering, operations and maintenance. Date 20th to 24th April 2020. 1-week intensive course on electrical power, earthing, lighting, uninterrupted power supply UPS, inverter and solar system. Date 1st to 5th June 2020. 1-week intensive course on studio broadcast equipment and outside broadcast operation. Date 15th to 19th June 2020. 1-week course on new technologies, optical fiber, IP technologies, automation storage and wireless technology. Date 10th to 14th August 2020. The venue Venue for all courses is NTA Television College, near Old Government House, Rayfield, Jos. Course fee 40,000 naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. For more inquiries, please call 0803-314-4383 or 0806-980-9807. NTA TV College, Jos. Training you to be the best you want to be.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bonvita is packed with vitality and a richer, creamier taste.
You're welcome back. Correspondent Kunle Adeye seeks the views of some Nigerians on COVID-19. Our conversation starts after this.
Well, according to what we were told, they said it's in Nigeria, and then basically it's they said it's everywhere now, so that we should be careful, we should sensitize ourselves, we should not shake hands anyhow and all those things like that. That's the only little thing I knew about it.
According to what I know about coronavirus, I was told coronavirus started it all started from China. Like, if you have coronavirus, there are some symptoms you face, like normal fever. You start feeling dizzy, start feeling as if your normal sickness, like the way normal sickness used to come. Personally, like these days, I monitor the kind of food I eat, the kind of water I take, and when I'm going out, I always try to prevent the way I go to place I don't know about.
To wash your hands, and not just washing your hands the usual way. You need to wash your hand with like 20 seconds at least. Scrub it properly. Not just washing, scrub your hands for 20 seconds minimum. And also, when you want to sneeze, you don't just sneeze like covering your hands with your mouth. Use your elbow to sneeze. And also, if you find somebody with flu, give the person a minimum of 3 feet distance. Don't go close to people who have flu. That is catarrh and cough and all.
I don't know about it, but I was hearing it that there's coronavirus.
What the government would do is that they should do a thorough. They should put thorough preventive measures in our borders and also in our airports, to make sure that those gadgets that will thoroughly scan foreigners that will come into the country should be provided, so that if these things are being used, it will really prevent spread of the disease in this country.
Coronavirus is a virus, as the name implies. Is one of those viruses that is, of course, since the advent of coronavirus attack in China, it had moved across several countries of the continent. And so far, right now in Nigeria, we have 2 cases of it, 2 in Lagos, and we've been told to clean our hands, maintain proper hygiene in order not to contact coronavirus.
All right, many thanks there. You had the views of a cross-section of Nigerians in that Vox Pop. We have 4 guests with us in the studios. Let's welcome the Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Alhaji Lai, pleasure to have you with us. So good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning.
Okay. Also here with us in the studios, we'd like to welcome Dr. Garba Abari, his Director General, National Orientation Agency, NOA. Dr. Abari, pleasure to have you around on the program.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good morning.
Jumain?
Yes.
Okay.
We also have Dr. John Olajijo, Incident Manager, COVID-19 Response, Nigerian Center for Disease Control, Abuja. He's also Director, Health Emergency Preparedness and Response, Nigeria Center for Disease Control, Abuja. You're welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you join us. And Dr. Isis Akuma Eboja, Public Health Specialist. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Pleasure to have you join us.
All right. Once again, I'd like to welcome you. Just before we get on with the issue of advocacy, which is the core of our conversation this morning, let's have a clear understanding now of the latest developments with regard to the second case that is said to be a derivative of the index case in the country. What do we know at this time since the Minister of Health gave his briefing yesterday?
Yes, thank you very much. As a matter of fact, on the 8th of March 2020,
you knew quite well that we have 40 asymptomatic contacts that were on isolation. So according to the best practice, we decided to test them again for the second time, and one of them now come out to be positive. And immediately has been transferred to IDH in Lagos and is under treatment and is stable as I talk to you now.
So should there be a source of concern for Nigerians?
No. The major thing we did was we ensured that we had all the contact under isolation. So there, in fact, is a good practice for us in Nigeria. It is a plus for us that we were able to have all our contacts in the same place, and we are monitoring them. And when this now come down with the disease, with the infection, we took care of them immediately. So it's not a panic. There shouldn't be any fear because they are still under our custody. They are not in the population.
What is the state of the index case, and how long has it been in quarantine?
Okay, the index case has been there since 27th of February. It's clinically stable, emotionally stable, and is okay for now. The only thing is that we need to test him again for the virus. So if the virus is eventually negative, it will be discharged.
Okay, of all the people who have come in contact with the index case, have they all been identified?
Yes. What really happened is there are still some that are yet not identified. It was as a result of the fact that they gave wrong address, wrong information. But all the other ones that are identified, they are under surveillance, under monitoring of Nigeria Center for Disease Control. Yes.
All right, and that's what led Lagos State government to announce the names of two passengers who were on the same flight with the index case.
Yes, because
are they Nigerians?
I don't have the status of that. The reason why we have to mention it was because they're supposed to have come by now to us and say, look, I was part of that. But up to now, we have not heard from them, we have not seen them, and they will constitute another issues for the place where they are. So as they are announced now, at least people that are around them will be able to say, oh, I know of this person is so place, so we will be able to get them.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. Well, just one other point with regard to the issues that we are dealing with. Dr. Ibojo, I mean, you're a public health expert. Why is the world suddenly in a panic mode? I mean, considering, as some persons have said, that the fatalities are just around about 3,200, even though the numbers are climbing rapidly, versus other kinds of ailments that claim hundreds of thousands of lives each year. So why should the world be responding the way it is doing with all kinds of measures that we are seeing?
Because of the widespread, as you know, people are traveling from one country to the other, and even within the country where epidemic has been reported, like China, for example, Italy, France, whatever, people are traveling within the country. And the fact that there's a spread of the infection from one place to the other is enough reason for people to be concerned. I think the right word to use in our own case here is to be concerned, not to panic. And that is what everybody is trying to let people know. Be concerned, be alert, but don't panic. There's a difference between the two.
Just repeat that again for the benefit of our viewers.
Okay. We want everybody to be concerned. We want everybody to know. We want everybody to be alert and to respond appropriately to the authorities that are guiding us. But there's no reason for people to panic. Panicking is a totally different approach. And we don't need to panic because those who are in charge are doing what they are supposed to be doing.
Honorable Minister of Information, what does this mean to you?
Well, you see, I think I'll take off from where Dr. Ibojo, left. Yes, it is true that we've had also epidemics before. We had the severe and acute respiratory syndrome, and the mortality rate, if I remember, was about 9.6%. We had the Middle East respiratory syndrome. The fatality rate was about 34%. We had Ebola. Fatality rate was about 90%. And yes, today we have the coronavirus, and so far, fatality rate is about 3.4%. So you begin to ask, why then should that cause for concern or panic? I think because for two main reasons, in my own understanding. The first is that while the other had a very high mortality rate, the effect on the economy in particular was not as severe as this, because we now have an epidemic that actually attacks what we call the surface economy. Any economy that has to do with movement, whether it's travel, whether it is shopping. And so far, within 2 months, the losses have been quite a phenomenon. We're talking about almost $2.7 trillion, which is the equivalent of the entire GDP of the UK. The travel industry would lose about $100 billion. China, where it started, the growth has slowed down from 6% to 4.5%. Now, I think another thing that actually, it's quite worrisome about this particular virus is that only very few epidemics have resulted in kind of lockdown we've seen. 60 million people have been locked down in Italy as we speak. Another 60 million has been locked down in China. Iran, South Korea, battling with them. And when you even go to the US and the UK, and I think this what to me is very worrisome. By end of Sunday night, there were around 9,000 infected people. By yesterday night, it had climbed to around 14,000. So, which means we're having about 5,000 plus new cases every day. But when you look at Italy, I don't know what is happening, because Italy in one day had 1,700 new cases. And as far what we are told, that there's no known cure yet, and that's probably the next vaccine is many months away. Now, but I think is the fact that this particular virus has crippled the economy and has the potential to wipe out the economy. Yesterday alone, the Dow Jones lost more money in one day than it's ever done in its history. And I think this is why when we see some countries take some decisions which you call panic, I think it's because it's a completely different kind of epidemic.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Garba Abari. No existing drugs to treat the disease. Advocacy now comes into play. Where is Nigeria on that?
Well, thank you very much. I think the disease is here, as it is in almost 100 countries now. And of particular concern and the interest to us as a country should be now prevention. Prevention. How do we prevent? And the extent to which we prevent is contingent upon the information, correct information made available to citizens from all relevant agencies that have to do with the containment of this disease. We have the Center for Disease Control. So they are handling the clinical aspects of the problem. Then we have all relevant information agencies of the government, led by the Ministry of Information, which is also leading the advocacy and the sensitization of citizens on how to stay safe. And the staying safe, by extension, means taking preventive measures that will stop spread or escalation of what we already have in our hands. Now, why advocacy becomes very important is because of the nature of our social environment. The nature of our social environment. We go to churches in large number. We go to mosques in large number. Our market system is a type that brings bodily contact between individuals and amongst individuals. We have institutions, we have also in our hands cases of where people live in internally displaced camps in large numbers, with children, with women. And because they are internally displaced persons camps, the level of sanitary conditions is not actually as desirable as you may find in ordinary homes. So to this extent, advocacy has to be heightened, sensitization has to be heightened, and you need different platforms to address different cases. We use the radio, we use the traditional institutions, we use the religious, the religious leaders. We also use other citizen-based organizations to reach out so that the correct information is handed out to citizens on how to first prevent yourself and stay safe, and by preventing yourself, therefore, preventing the other person. So I think this is something which, to a very large extent, I can say Nigeria has done well, and in fact, very well. Maybe what we need even not have the commendation from the World Health Organization. This is where we as citizens, of course, our healthcare delivery system might not be where we are all expecting it to be, but as a country, I think we have done well.
I just wonder, I'm tempted to still stay with you, Abe, because this is a huge task that you have outlined with regard to the various population groups that you need, to get in touch with. And NOAA, of course, has its tentacles throughout the country. How much of a task is this for NOAA, for instance, as one of the agencies that should drive the advocacy in this regard?
Actually, a very big task, if you ask me, and within the limits of our realities, and bringing in institutional memory of how we have had this. Don't forget, in fact, for NOAA, we just streamlined into the advocacy because we were already in the field on LASA. We were already on the field on LASA sensitization and in all local governments. Annually, we always get ourselves prepared for periodic outbreak of diseases. LASA, and of course we were saying, after LASA we will also be starting advocacy and sensitization on meningitis because of the heat, which usually comes with the disease.
It has actually begun.
While we were on the field with LASA, the COVID-19 came in, and so we streamlined properly. Now, in all the states of the Federation, the National Orientation Agency is part of the committees that have been set up by respective states' ministries of information, to come up with strategies of containing and of prevention. So I think to that extent, the National Orientation Agency, we are not driving, but we are also everywhere. We are everywhere. So
everywhere as a passenger.
Everywhere as a passenger. Everywhere as a passenger. Everywhere as an important passenger.
And a conductor.
And a conductor.
All right, Honorable Minister. I mean, still on this aspect, I used to pretend, the respective agencies, and more particularly, linkages with the subnational entities. So how is this going?
Well, I think, like Dr. Barry said. As of today, there's no known cure. for COVID-19, the only thing we can do is to prevent and contain. And to prevent and contain, you need advocacy, you need sensitization, and you need public enlightenment. And what we have done is that we made available to the Ministry of Health, or rather I would say to the entire interministerial and multi-sectoral committee set up, our platforms have been made available to sensitize Nigerians and enlighten them on how to prevent coronavirus. Now, our major challenge is that we need more cooperation from the states. We need more cooperation also from the public, but I'll start from the states. On the interministerial multi-sectoral committee, we have representatives from the 4 or 5 states that host the point of entries today. That is Lagos, Rivers, Kano, and then the FCT. Enugu comes, even though the airport is still under construction. We are not unmindful also that the land border and the seaports are also point of entries, and they could also be points. They are very sensitive points, and that's why we have MPA, we have quarantine, we have virtually every agency that has to do with with containment. However, that is at the national level. This thing needs to go down to states. I think the last report of the committee, it was reported that certain states are not cooperating with the government, and I think we try to resolve it internally, because this is an emergency that makes no distinction between the north or the south, or between your political is completely irrelevant. So to that extent, I think we need more cooperation from the states. I'm really very impressed with what Lagos State is doing, not just because they've had the experience, they are leveraging on what they did, when we had the Ebola. But you can see that they've gone out in the area of sensitization and the area of enlightenment. They even have this very entertaining, documentaries and advertorials. We want other states also to come in. But again, another thing is that Nigerians must take ownership of this emergency. If they don't do, we're going to have a problem. I was listening to some commentary yesterday. I said the difference between South Korea and China in containment, and probably other parts of the world, is that the citizens also took ownership and they saw it as a common problem. And you can see what we are facing in Nigeria. From pure dishonesty, refusal to even fill the forms correctly. They think it's a joke. It's not a joke. Now, how can we trace you, even to save you, if you give us a fake address on the form? This is what we see happening. So if there's any danger today of this virus spreading in Nigeria, it will have to do largely with the non-cooperation from our people. And like the WHO Director General said, he said, this is not the time to panic. What we need today is not rumors, but facts. What we need today is science and not fiction. All we need today is solidarity and not stigmatization. So we would need our nationals to please cooperate with us. Without them, we can do very little. And this is what all the advocacies we are running are so direct, so simple. One, wash your hands very, very clean. If you see anybody who's having problem with his, with breathing, please, report to the authorities. If anybody is coughing or sneezing, consistently or continuously, please report him or her. And then if you are not feeling well, it's not a crime for you to report yourself to the next station. But when people even refuse to come out, to come and cure themselves, and unfortunately, the virus is so dangerous that you might be incubating the virus. It might not even manifest, and you can still transmit it to another person. So this is, I think, what I see, as the major, challenges that we are facing. At the level of government, we not only are we prepared for the emergency, we're also even prepared, for the response and for the containment. However, without the support of the states and the people, will not go far. And I want to take the opportunity to commend the Catholic Church in particular. The Catholic Church, from my findings, they have taken this matter seriously, and they have abridged some of their processes in church, during Mass. For instance, I'm told that, the Station of the Cross, it has been cut down from about 14 steps or so to 7 steps. I might be wrong in the number, the detail, but what is important to me is the principle. Today, before coronavirus, the Reverend Father will give you your sacrament and by his hand. No, today they give it to you in your hand to and take it yourself. And this dovetails into what Dr. Abari is saying, that our traditional rulers, our religious leaders, must cooperate with us. If the Saudi Arabia can cancel Umrah, and in Iran, for 2 Jumat services consecutively, it has been cancelled. If the Pope can give his sermons via video instead of the traditional window, it means it's because we are alive that we are Christians, because we are alive that we are Muslims. So we need the religious authority to please cooperate with us. And our traditional rulers, they play a huge role in this matter. So this is what I see as the challenges facing us right now.
Okay, you've talked about synergy with state government. I'll be coming to Dr. John Oladejo now. What about states with peculiar issues like Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, with lots of IDPs? Social amenities is not enough. What kind of advocacy can be done in that? Should it be intensified in areas like that?
Yes, thank you very much. Before this coronavirus, we've been having a series of outbreaks like cholera in that particular area, and we were able to contain them. So we were using that particular process to reach out to the IDPs and then all the people that are at the grassroots level in that area. I was there for about 3 months during the real resurgence, and then we were able to contain most of the outbreaks that were coming up during that period. So we are using the same step. We are using the DSNOs at the local government level. We are using all our health workers, and we have actually started a sensitization of all the health workers at that level. So we gave them some advisories. We sent some IEC materials to them, and they are actually making use of it.
So what's the response like?
Oh, the response is very, very attractive and very, very high. They are actually responding very well.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Eboja. I mean, 2 issues that pertain to our health situation in Nigeria. One, a tendency for persons to resort to self-medication. Second, tendency to conceal an ailment or symptoms of an ailment. They say, what is wrong with you? They say, nothing. And here we are dealing with this virus. I mean, the world is struggling to understand the virus. So what does this therefore mean in terms of our advocacy, in terms of our public enlightenment, because we understand that some of the symptoms actually mimic the symptoms of the common cold or the flu. So if you ask the person, I said, I just cut and I just worry me, and the guy goes. But in the meantime, he has this, potentially, he has this virus. Another time, he's looking for all kinds of pills to pop. So how do we come out of this now, considering the times that we are in?
Well, one of the things that the Honorable Minister of Information said that is very key in our discussion here is the fact that people should take responsibility for themselves and for others. Let me start from individuals. The key problem we have in health in Nigeria today, like you said rightly, is the fact that when you are sick, instead of going to the health personnel to help you, you assume that you know, and you take medication by yourself. Okay, even if it is an emergency, say for example, you caught malaria in the night, and therefore you have to take anti-malaria because you know how malaria presents in the past. The next day you should go and be tested. It might not even be malaria, and it might be something more serious than what you think. The issue of self-medication is still a very serious problem in Nigeria today. And let me remind us, one of the reasons why we were unable to continue using chloroquine for treating malaria was because of self-medication. People were taking chloroquine so haphazardly to a point that the malaria parasite became resistant to chloroquine. And therefore we had problem. And when we changed from chloroquine to the ones we're using now, what happened? The prices increased. So it affected everybody. Rather than spending, for example, 500 naira to treat a cause of malaria, for example, you are spending over 1,000 to 2,000 naira today, which is not supposed to be. That's one. Two, the fact that somebody knows more than you means that you have to rely on that person. That doesn't mean that you are ignorant. That doesn't mean that you are useless. But it means that one hand is stronger than the other. Where my left hand can do well, my right hand may not be able to do equally well in that field. But that doesn't make the left hand useless. People think that, well, I went to school and I can read, and therefore I can treat myself. That is not true. Each of us has a responsibility, and each of us has to know the limit of that responsibility. Let me also add something. With regards to people's behavior, it is not only when we have epidemic. I'm glad you asked this question. It is a general problem we're having in health. We tell people, when you reach the age of 40, make sure that at least once in a year, you go for medical checkup. Whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. People say, no, I don't care. I'm strong. I'm okay. How do you know? You feel okay, but you may not be okay. And let's not forget that some of these cases that we have, epidemic, for example, now, it is not just you now. It is you and somebody else. The limit of your freedom is the beginning of another person's freedom. And sometimes, too, the limit of your ignorance is the beginning of another person's
wisdom.
Risk of death. And therefore, we should make sure that we do things properly. As a people, as a country, we find it difficult to obey rules. Very unfortunate. And this is the reason why the issue of advocacy continues to be very relevant. You tell a patient, you have this problem. Take this drug, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and one in the evening. He goes home, he takes one in the morning. In the afternoon, he skips. In the evening, he remembers he takes in the evening. The next day, he wakes up very early in the morning, and he goes, and he doesn't take it. How do you expect to be well when you are not even adhering to what the health personnel has told you to do with regards to yourself, not somebody else yet? Then you think of when you are looking after another person. The case becomes even more difficult. So in summary, I would like to appeal to Nigerians. Please adhere to authorities. In this case now, for example, that we are dealing with epidemics, the health authorities are our commanders. In every war, there has to be a commander. And we should listen to the commanders. If you don't, as a soldier in the field, you will die as well as the commander, because he's commanding both you and others and himself too. And if you recall, yesterday, let me bring this in. Yesterday, somebody mentioned it. The DG of the National Center for Disease Control came back from China, isolated himself, quarantined himself, stayed in the house for 14 days before he came out. He could have as well said, I know how to protect myself. I have all the knowledge. I'm a doctor. I don't have to worry. He didn't do that. He set a good example for others to follow. And let me add here, I heard that even at the airport, when they tell some people to fill forms or to be checked, some people think, no, they don't need it, or they think that they are VIPs. Let me explain something. VIP can mean more than one thing. VIP could mean very important personality, but it could also mean very irresponsible personality. And when you are not complying with authorities, you are not being important, you are being irresponsible. And that irresponsibility will affect both you, your family members, your loved ones, and the country at large. So in summary, let us try to do what is right. It is only good for ourselves as individuals. It's good for our families, it's good for our loved ones, it's good for our society. And when we do this, and we're able to comply, and let me mention something. China, for example, is able to do the much that they're able to do now because it is one country where people comply with regulations, where people adhere to rules. I wonder if this thing, for example, had started in Nigeria, how many people we would have lost by today? So Nigerians, let's try to obey rules. It is for the good of every one of us, especially when it has to do with our health.
All right, Dr. Boja, thank you very much. I mean, you're saying, speculating if it started in Nigeria. Nigerians will say that, God loves Nigeria. But God also loves the rest of the world.
Exactly.
And then we are seeing what is happening in those places. We're talking about VIPs. We have seen a number of VIPs who have been taken down by coronavirus in Iran, for instance, and some other places. I just want to bring in the Honorable Minister again. We're talking about protocols at the airport. But there have been some concerns as to the streamlining of operations. I mean, we know what the experience is usually at our international arrivals. You find some officers, leapfrogging the others to go and welcome passengers and to give them express processing. You're a member of the committee. The Minister of Aviation is also a member of the committee. Customs, immigration, DSS, and now the sanitary, the port health officials. What do we know at this time about the streamlining of their processes? I mean, I haven't been close to the international departures or arrivals since all of this started.
Well, I've traveled, I think, about twice, during this period, and I've also been a member of the committee. We've paid, visit to the airport, and I want to say that by and large, there's a lot of synergy between the various agencies at the airport, be it port health, be it immigration, be it customs, be it, even the aviation industry, or quarantine. I think there's been a lot of, synergy. And the coordinating committee has been working to provide not just equipment and infrastructure to both states and at the airport, but also giving them policy directives. But again, we have challenges from very unexpected quarters at the airport. Some airlines are not cooperating with us. Some airlines have refused even to give out the forms, which we feel is a very disturbing. But this matter was raised at the last meeting, and the Minister of Aviation said was going to take it up. The issue of VIPs was also taken up at that meeting. But again, another area which is thwarting the efforts of the government and the committee is fake news. As soon as the coronavirus, first case was reported in Nigeria, the purveyors of fake news went overdrive. The first thing they said was that the Italian that came in threatened to escape because the facilities, were not adequate.
Yeah.
It's fake news.
It was not correct.
It's not correct. The next was that the Uber driver that took the Italian to the airport threatened that was going to spread the disease everywhere unless was paid 100 million naira. This is not true. Another fake news was that if you take garlic, it will cure the virus. It's not true. You can take garlic, you can take as much garlic as you want, but please just make sure you adhere to the simple regulations. Another fake news which is making that Africans are immune to this virus. It's not improving at all. And another one is that all the people that traveled to Italian have vanished to thin air. It's not correct. As soon as this happened, we knew it was going to that this is an area that the fake news purveyors will go to exploit. We went out. Unfortunately, Facebook responded very well, and they pledged to help us on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Once we flag any particular disinformation, a piece of news will be fake or false, they will yank it off their pages. But this to me are the kind of challenges at the level of government. It's not just because United Nations has commended our efforts, both in terms of preparation, in terms of prevention, in terms of even the scientific feat that was performed by the Center for Disease Control. It's also significant to know that when virologists all over the world were being invited, the only black person in that committee in China was the director of Director General of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. And incidentally, the coordinating committee is not just made up of agencies in Nigeria. We also have the United States Center for Disease Control and Prevention. We have the World Bank. We have the WHO. We have the West African Response and Prevention Control. We have WAHU, the West African Health Organization. We have NGOs, because the federal government has taken this matter with all the seriousness. But we can only succeed as far as we get the cooperation of Nigerians. Nigerians need to help themselves, because it's not a disease that if you keep it to yourself, it will only kill you or may not kill you. It might kill hundreds of people who would contact it from you. And that is why we believe that so far we must listen to what the doctors are saying. They know better than us in this matter. We should not second guess them. If they say we should wash our hands, let's please do so. If they say if we see somebody who is not breathing too well, we should alert. And they even say that if somebody is coughing or sneezing too much, keep at least 5 meters distance from him. These are very simple rules.
That's right. And for us also to change some of our social habits. I mean, if I extended a handshake now to the Director General of NOAA, he would say, and then he gives me a fish. I say, what did happen? I said my hand not clean. So I believe that is the case.
On CNN, even Mike Pence, the Vice President of America, was.
Yes, that's right.
That's a new trend.
I was worried yesterday when I was listening to the CNN. There's certain very high level officials that met with Trump.
Yes.
When they came back, I think some of them tested positive. You see, this is respect of nobody.
Yes, absolutely. I just was wondering. I want to come back to DG NOAA. You earlier itemized mass populations, at places of worship and markets and so on and so forth. But again, with regard to precautionary measures which we need to take, it's a topic that we have focused on Good Morning Nigeria even before the advent of coronavirus. What is your linkage, if any, with sanitary health inspectors, particularly in our markets? Because quite aside from the bodily contact, you find that a number of our markets are actually pigsties.
Yes.
Okay, first, thank you very much for this question, but I want to also expand on what Dr. Adejo has said about what is happening in the Northeast in relation to the question asked by Jumai. If you take Yobe and Borno in particular, these two, these are areas with expansive border communities. Expansive border communities. And only 2-3 days ago, Cameroon was said to have recorded its own first case of coronavirus. So in this respect, it is also important that these border communities that are that have history of integration over a very long time, sharing common markets, sharing common medical facilities, sharing schools and what have you, are also brought on the front line of sensitization in the advocacy as to preventive measures. That's one. Secondly, I still insist that we are taking the sensitization a step higher in these areas because of the IDPs and then because of the cross-border movement, you know, to ensure that people are aware about this disease and what they should do as individuals, as a community, as to stay safe and not to endanger also others. Because when you stay safe, you also are keeping others safe. So this is one area where the sensitization and advocacy is being taken a step higher. Now, again, coming back to what my brother here, what I was saying about the attitude of Nigerians, you know, and this is actually quite a very worrisome. On the very day that we got to know about some Nigerians not submitting themselves to screening. You know, I was on my Twitter handle and I said this is actually irresponsible because they must understand that they have to remain alive first before they are VIPs, and that this is a country with set laws, and the extent to which all of us behave responsibly and in accordance with the laid down regulations as provided for by our laws and the guidelines as provided for by the relevant authorities, to that same extent can we as a country remain safe and contain this problem. Now, our markets, yes. Our butcheries, yes. And this is also one area where the advocacy and the sensitization has to go. And you remember, Kinsley, remember that I have said we have also activated our advocacy with citizens groups. These are the citizens groups that I was actually talking about. The butchers, the conductors in the market. I mean, in the leadership of the various motor parks, because these are also areas that the sensitization needs to be stepped up higher because of the way and manner in which we convey our passengers.
Sorry, Dr. Abaria, I'm sorry to interject. You see, I agree absolutely with you. But you see, there's an issue that Kinsley has raised, which actually goes far beyond sensitization. The state of our abattoirs, state of our markets, the state of our public health. And this is where I think our appeal to states and local governments becomes even more and more relevant. Abattoirs, markets are all run by state and local governments.
And motor parks.
And motor parks. Mm-hmm. So while we sit on top here in Abuja, dishing out, policies, money, the points of entry, sensitizing people, because there must also be concrete effort on the part of states, and that we want to call the subnationals, especially local governments, especially states government, to also take ownership of this fight. I just felt it is important that
that's
right.
That's welcome.
Yes, we have quite some tweets that just came in. We have to look at them. Akeju Olagbaju tweets, I have to repeat my comment of yesterday in which I stated that COVID-19 is an economic war and predicted that it is further going to crash the oil price. The Economic Advisory Council should be awake to their responsibility. It is a trying period for all of us.
All right, that's fine. I mean, that's dealing with the economic implications of coronavirus. Incidentally, that was a topic that we had, our main conversation topic yesterday on
That's
Good Morning
why he said he's still...
That's right, he's repeating the point that he has made. But of course, we are here talking about sensitization. Before you run an economy, you must be healthy. And that's what the medical personnel and then the information experts have also been saying. Akeju Olagbaju, thanks a lot for the points that you have raised. Sani Michael Amakoji has another tweet. It says, as far as Nigeria is concerned, there is no Nigerian that is not aware of coronavirus. Hence, our efforts should be to create more awareness and provide the needed preventive measures such as isolation centers and providing the required drugs for treatment.
And Abdul tweets, from what I saw with the visit of the Senate President to one of the centers, I am not impressed. Funds were not released, and the level of advocacy seems at its lowest ebb. We must act fast before we are engulfed in another health crisis.
Well, that was well about a week ago, where the Senate President went to the University of Abuja. No, University of Abuja Teaching Hospital. That's about a week ago. I think there have been prompt responses to all of that now in terms of what is being done. Festus Akimboyewa, Nigerians are responding to the coronavirus with widespread panic and are now resorting to extremes, because you are hearing conflicting messages. If you have been listening, of course, you can get in the right messages from our guests who've been on this program. Several countries have already imposed mass quarantine. We don't have that yet in Nigeria because it doesn't call for it.
Right. And Oti Zokwe tweets, Nigeria is handling the coronavirus situation very well. We as citizens should do more in terms of advocacy and help spread the awareness. Citizen participation, I think that's what he's talking about there. Yes.
That's right. So let's go to the next one. Dele Jack Solomon says, to prevent the spread of coronavirus, our people need to be told to observe regular hand washing with soap and water for at least 20 seconds at a time. Avoid touching their face, especially the mouth, eyes, and nose. Covering their mouth and nose when coughing and sneezing. Thoroughly cook their meats and eggs, and avoiding close contact with persons showing symptoms of respiratory illnesses, including coughing and sneezing. Yes, thank you very much. Yes. It's not a medical doctor, but that's fine. Yes. It's part of the advocacy.
Yes. Perhaps tweets, the major agency responsible to sensitize Nigerians with adequate information and on a regular basis, National Orientation Agency. NOAA seems to be comatose. I don't think so. I think they've been really doing an advocacy for. Yes, the agency.
Dr. Abari is right here.
Yes, he's right.
We know that he's financially challenged as an agency, but the point that he has indicated, again, just to clarify this for our viewers, that NOAA was already on advocacy on the heels of Lassa fever. So they are riding on that crest to continue with the advocacy for the coronavirus, which was going to also lead to advocacy against CSM, that is cerebrospinal meningitis.
So he said they should.
And I know that several times a day, the NTA airs the advertisement and the jingles that is being created by NOAA.
Yes, they said, let government.
So NOAA, you have a lot of advocacy.
He says, let government rejig you with giving you a lot of funds. Yes. So all thanks to the Federal Ministry of Health and the National Center for Disease Control, both of which have been up and doing in addressing the pandemic. The advocacy should therefore not be left to media engagement alone. Let there be sensitization in public places, schools, markets, workshop centers, etc.
All right, I just go quickly to Law Alpha. So the different levels of government in Nigeria are serious and ready in containing the outbreak of coronavirus, and kudos have also come from the WHO, but more still needs to be done to sensitize the public to develop personal hygiene levels.
Chris Simon tweets, federal government should collaborate with medical experts and WHO and conduct a research that would result in discovery of a vaccine for the cure of COVID-19. Professor Maurice Iwu has done a wonderful work. Government should back him up.
Titus Mondenong, over to our health researchers. Maybe the issue of COVID-19 could just be a blessing in disguise where we could look inwards to developing our own antiviral vaccines. Okay.
He said, may God help mankind, as usual.
well,
Mike Anyako said, tweet advocacy on the novel coronavirus is a welcome development. It is the duties of regulatory health authorities to be on top of their responsibilities to tackling this menace. Prevention is always better than cure, so it is incumbent on individuals to maintain clean environments in its entirety. The importance of use of sanitizers cannot be overemphasized. Government at levels, traditional institutions, religious bodies, NGOs, etc. should vigorously pursue sensitization exercise to people on the preventive measures. All hands must be on deck to fight it.
This is coming from Jane Ame, and this is one of the popular views out there, so the medical doctors here will respond to this. Coronavirus, like its predecessor, Ebola, will not survive in Nigeria due to our harsh weather. In terms of how it's affecting our economy, I think we should give it to our experts to find a way out instead of getting worried. Now, that's the point. Part of what is circulating to say, our weather conditions are pretty so harsh that if the virus comes here, yesterday in Abuja, the temperature was 39 degrees. So let the virus come and then we see what will happen to it. So NCDC respond to that.
Yeah, as the Honorable Minister just said, all these rumors are not true. We have to use scientific base to respond to any of these virus. You just don't listen to speculations, because we have not seen it scientifically that this is true. So we don't, abide to that. So we need to have adequate information. We need to have, adequate enough resources at our disposal to really fight this disease. We don't accept that or just rely on that at all. There's no basis for that.
Cold comfort, as the people will say. All right. Just before the Honorable Minister, we'll get the Honorable Minister to give us his closing thoughts. Dr. Eboja, what are your closing thoughts on this with regard to what we need to do as a people? If part of saying, look, let us take ownership and responsibility for what is right with us. Yes.
Well, individuals should cooperate. Individuals should do what they are told to do now. Look after your health and the health of those around you. But I want to also emphasize on the issue of the role of the states and local governments. To me, they need to do more. About a week or two ago, when we had a program like this, one of the things I mentioned was that every state should, more than 2 weeks ago, should now have a dedicated health facility aimed at a case like this in the event of the worst scenario. And I can bet you, I bet my last penny right now, that if you want to check all the states one by one, there will be 1 or 2 or 3 who are not complying or who are not doing exactly what they are expected to do. This is a situation where everybody, individuals, local government, states, should wake up and sensitize their citizens and get themselves ready too, in the event that we have more cases than we have now.
Okay, Honorable Minister, your closing thoughts.
Well, I thank you very much, and I want to take the opportunity to thank the various media agencies and platforms that have generously, given their airtime for the sensitization, for the public enlightenment, and in particular the NTA, the Federal Radio Corporation. They air our documentaries regularly. They air our jingles regularly. They invite. They give their platforms to health experts, to analysts to talk about the virus. The Nigerian Center for Disease Control gives a daily update using our platforms. The News Agency of Nigeria sends SMS to Nigerians at random just to advocacy. And of course the NOA, even though he's here, I know that they have translated all the material given to them by the NCDC to Hausa, to Igbo, to Pidgin, to Yoruba, and for full day, and they have reached out to every nook and cranny of the country. But we have not seen the end of this. We will still have to probably up our sensitization with come back to you to give us more airtime. That's the NTA, FRCN, NAN. Would want anybody that knows anything about the virus to come and advise Nigerians. And overall, the only solution we have so far is to adhere to what the doctors and scientists are saying we should do.
And we hope that those other two will bring themselves forth and for.
We hope so. And we should not wait for them to bring themselves. If they have not given false names and they are not ghosts, those who know them should please go and report them to them.
Absolutely. Honorable Minister, it's a closing thoughts. I just wondered that Dr. Oladejo has some information to give out that might be helpful in terms of helplines, I believe. Very quickly, yes.
We have a helpline that anybody can call. It's 24/7 call center. Any information, any inquiries, don't just go and listen to rumors. It's 080-097-0010.
Can you take that again?
080-097-0010. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And it's also WhatsApp. You can send a WhatsApp through this line. Don't listen to anybody. Just send any inquiries to us. We will attend.
All right. We wish we had that punch earlier. I would have used it as part of our caption for the conversation. But regardless, I mean, of course, NTA will continue to play that up as a scroll on the screen. On that note, we'd like to thank you, Dr. John Oladejo, Incident Manager, National Coronavirus Emergency Operations Center. Thanks a lot for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Our deep thanks also to Dr. Isaac Eboja, Public Health Specialist. Thanks a lot for being around.
My pleasure.
Director General, National Orientation Agency, Dr. Gaba Abari. Thanks a lot for being with us.
Thank you.
And last but not the least, Honorable Minister of Information and Culture, Elijah Lai Mohammed. Thanks for being with us on the program this morning.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so it's Good Morning Nigeria, still reaching you live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have a second topic to discuss, which is the Ivory 8 Ball, and it relates to persons who are living with albinism.
COVID-19 transmission is mostly through droplets from sneezing and saliva. The most effective way to protect yourself from the virus is to practice good personal hygiene. Wash hands with soap under running water or use an alcohol-based sanitizer if water is not available. Maintain at least 2 meters distance between yourself and anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Cover your mouth and nose with your elbow or tissue when you cough or sneeze. Dispose of the used tissue immediately. If you have traveled recently to a country with COVID-19 outbreak in the last 14 days and you have a fever, cough, or breathing difficulty, call NCDC toll-free numbers before going to the hospital. This message is from the National Orientation Agency.
My name is Yemi Adetunji, the COO downstream of NNPC. Ever since the closure of the borders, we have seen a marked reduction of about 10% in terms of the evacuation of what you call loadouts of PMS, which equates to about 6 million liters per day, essentially because of the border closure, because of certain aspects we've also done as NNPC, working with our sister organizations, sister agencies, Nigerian Customs, DPR, Federal Ministry of Petroleum Resources, and other agencies, and also what we call Operation White, which is an intervention we have put in place to trace and track every molecule of petroleum products as they arrive in country through the vessels, as they move through the depots, and as they're evacuated with trucks out of the depots.
Hold it! Me, I don't comot my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you gonna yarn? What did the yarn serve? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militants is there. You know good. Me, I not do again, Sam. Because why?
change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back. As part of efforts to save the lives of people with albinism, the Albino Foundation is set to help hold fundraising event known as Ivory Aid Ball. And joining us in the studio to discuss the Ivory Aid Ball is Jake Ekpele, founder Albino Foundation. Good to have you join us.
Good morning, man.
Nigeria.
Good morning,
We'll
Nigeria.
also have Kachi Amajo, International Public Health Consultant. You're welcome to Good Morning, Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning.
So,
all right. So we'll begin with Jake. Good to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria. What's the Ivory Aid Ball all about, and what does it seek to achieve?
Well, you know, very many persons with albinism are susceptible to skin cancer, and Nigeria being the most populous nation in Africa, we have much more number of persons with albinism, and many of them also with skin cancer. We've been working on a project with the federal government where persons with albinism get free treatment for skin cancer. And I think it's the only country in the world that does that. But of course, economic downturn and everything is becoming relatively difficult for that project to continue. And so Ivory Aid Ball is an effort by the Albino Foundation, the NTA, AIT, Silverbird, and other media partners effort to generate funds, to raise funds through public individuals, spirited individuals who will contribute to a trust fund that will be used in helping both the federal government effort and our own private effort. It's a revolving fund that will be managed by a group of financial consultants and the bank so that we'll be able to intervene. Of course, you know that I'm a skin cancer survivor, and I know how expensive it is to intervene for anybody with skin cancer. So it's a fundraising event, succinctly put.
So can we put a statistic on the number of albinos, with cancer, skin cancer, as you go towards this event now? Yes,
by referral. By that I mean every time persons with albinism goes to the hospital to be treated, the foundation will issue a letter, especially to National Hospital. By referral, as a date, I think we've sent 4,820 persons with albinism to hospital, and that number is minimal because you're not talking about those in the rural areas, those who didn't come to the foundation, who went to private hospitals. The number is enormous, but statistically speaking, by the numbers that we have and by the research that we have carried out between National Hospital and the foundation, 4,820. Yeah, but there are many, many, many more of them that are waiting to be treated.
All right, thanks a lot. Kachi Amajo, let's bring you into the conversation now. I mean, what's your role in the ball, and what should we look out for, apart from just raising funds?
Yes, thank you so much. Well, my role is essentially coordinating event management and production, making sure that from A to B, from the beginning to the end of the event, even before so, that we have everything in order to not only ensure that we have an amazing event, but to also ensure that we're able to raise sufficient funds to treat and also provide preventative care for skin cancer. What to look out for, it's going to be an exquisite event where there's going to be different methods of fundraising. We want to be innovative in our approach. So we have an art auction for people who are interested in culture and art. There's so many amazing artists that are going to be auctioning their pieces there, where we're going to use some of those proceeds to go to the Skin Cancer Trust Fund. We also have open pledging. So we have an event that is not only going to be full of entertainment, but then will also help our audience and the larger audience in Nigeria identify with skin cancer patients that have albinism.
So what is the government doing to aid the efforts of the foundation since you now came in and intervention with albinism, people with cancer who have albinism? What is government's How far is government meeting you on this?
Let me take that question. Okay. Like I said, during the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo, we had a meeting, and then he agreed to treat persons with albinism for free. We started with five people, and of course, all of them showed up, and the number increased. And since then, every administration have carried the burden, including the current administration. So government provide free skin cancer treatment. But right now, as we speak, it's becoming a burden on National Hospital, because the arrangement was that National Hospital would treat and the Federal Ministry of Finance will pay. And of course, there's been backlog of non-payment, and the reason is because there is no specific budgetary allocation. You know, the initial payment we got was from the service-wide vote. Okay, and so to summarize, the government have been intervening by providing free skin cancer treatment, and I say that to say that Nigeria is the only country in the world that is doing that. But of course, it has become too burdensome and enormous, bearing the number of persons with albinism, and the fact that many of them shows up when the issue had become, when the lesion had become malignant. You know, so it becomes very extremely expensive to be treated, and in most cases, they are not even able to treat them, and they survive.
What is the target for the ball in terms of fundraising?
Okay, so, well, our target is really based on the continuum of care. Just to go into it, you know, when you're talking about any kind of medical treatment, it's not just the treatment itself. You have treatment before care, you have the treatment and then post-care to ensure that the full continuum of health is captured. So at this point, it's a revolving fund, and we're actually looking at a large number so that no matter which stage of cancer you're in, the type of cancer you're in, different treatment plans are available. So the larger fund for the entire Skin Cancer Trust Fund, may I?
Go ahead.
Yes, is 500 million naira. And that covers the cost from maybe if you're at stage 1 all the way up into stage 4 malignant cancer. And if you put it into perspective, there are cases where it's just preventative. There are cases where it could just be a small operation where you just remove a circumference area based on the medical treatment, or you may have to now go into radiology, chemotherapy, and as you can see, gradually it increases. So by having that large pool and revolving, meaning that we'll be continuously raising until we reach 500 million and hopefully beyond, we'll be able to help people no matter what stage they're in, from beginning to post-operative care, actually having the operation, and then, pre-operative care, so preparing you to have an operation or treatment, and then also making sure that you have every facility and every necessary need will be taken care of after you've received treatment.
Okay. Let me chip in because we've had a very recent development. Lady Ivy,
yes,
she's a song star, and she had to be flown to Stanford University. If we were to pay for everything, that treatment would have cost nothing less than $400,000.
Yes,
because she had 5 different types of surgeries. You know, each surgery, the minimum time was 8 hours. There was the first surgery, she went in by 9 a.m. in the morning, and she came out by 10 in the night. So it's a very complex situation, and that's when the whole thing becomes malignant. It's a very complex situation, very, very, very. It requires a lot of technology, requires a lot of expertise. One of the doctors that attended to her is considered the best in the world in melanoma.
When and where is this fundraiser kicking off?
We are looking. We're going to take off on the 2nd of April. 2nd of April is the D-Day, but like I said, it's a revolving fund, so it's open. People can donate, and because we want to be as transparent as possible and to bring integrity to what we're doing, and of course, if that is not the case, the DG of NTA will not throw his weight behind it. We want the bank and certain group of people as trustees of the fund, so that those that will need the funds will have access to it without any form of bureaucracy. And I want to also announce that, and that's kudos to the Minister of Health. By yesterday, we got a letter, and the Ministry of Health is also throwing her weight behind it. They are not giving us money, but if they give us, we'll take. They are not giving us money, but
it's endorsement.
Yes,
that's
so
what you're
is the event ticketed or by invitation?
We're doing an invitation event. Okay. Yes, it's by invitation. So during the event, we'll have an open pledging for people to come in and donate, and then also look at our auction items.
So where are you having this on the 2nd of April? Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, or where?
We're going to be in Abuja.
It's Abuja.
Yes.
Incidentally, and I want to use this opportunity to clarify, there's a club called Jake's Club. I have nothing to do with it. I wish I can afford to own that such a prestigious club. It's owned by the Lebanese, who has been here for a very long time. So it's on top of Silverbird Galleria here in Abuja. It's very exclusive, very cozy, and they have given it to us, the venue, for free. We're not paying for it.
So that's where you're going to have the ball.
The ball.
Yes.
The Jake's Club.
Yeah.
Which doesn't belong to Jake and Pele.
So is this event going to be sustained? Is it going to be continuous or just a one-off?
I like that question. Yes, it's going to be a continuous. That's why the fund is revolving. So we're doing this as a pilot. Once we take off, there'll be other small ivory 8 ball. It could be arts exhibition, but by this time next year, we're coming up again with the ball. It's something that we have planned the sustainability.
When you talk about the federal government bankrolling the cost of cancer treatment for persons with albinism, I was just wondering, what's been the role of state governments in this? Everything federal.
Unfortunately, we haven't received any form of assistance, not even moral support from most government, most of the state government, not one person, not one state government. And yet it is this state government that sends their indigent, so to speak, to us for treatment. Take for instance, I was in touch very close to the governor of Kogi State, and we were talking about intervention for a young man from Kogi State, and bureaucracy, we'll call you back, and the boy died. He died a few weeks ago, and there are other Kogi State indigene who are at a critical state, a critical condition. Not only Kogi State, from Lagos State, from River State, where I come from, and several other places. It was friends who came together to take me out of the country for my own issue. I mean, I can't afford it because you'll be amazed how much allowance I get from our Albino Foundation, So it's an expensive venture. and it requires collective effort. We need the assistance of state government, so that we can tackle this. Take for instance, the cost of carrying out a very strategic advocacy and providing mere information for persons with albinism in the country would have stemmed the tide of the rise of skin cancer situation. If I was educated enough at a tender age, I wouldn't have overexposed myself in the sun, which is responsible for the skin cancer.
And the weather is getting hotter now.
It's not even the hotness of the weather. Right here, I'm being affected. Right here.
Radiation.
Yes. The UVA, UVB.
Yes.
Yeah. So whether you are outside, you are affected the more. You are inside, you also are affected. So it requires, and these are simple information. It takes just 10 minutes for me to burn in the sun. If I go out and stand in the sun for 10 minutes, I'm burnt. Oh, they say, wear sunscreen. Sunscreen is good. But the myth about sunscreen is that once you put sunscreen on your skin, after 10 minutes, you will have to reapply. If you don't, you have become vulnerable to burnt.
All right, Jake Epele, founder, Abino Foundation, would like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you,
and
sir.
And wish you the very best in your forthcoming fundraiser. We also would like to thank Kachi Amajo, always event production manager and public health specialist. Thanks a lot for being with us on the program, and best wishes. Okay, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for tuning in. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Juma Yusuf. You have a wonderful day.